Imagine walking into a dusty old chapel where the paint is peeling, the candles are long gone, and the air smells like damp stone. You look up and see a cracked painting, half hidden by centuries of grime. To the untrained eye, it's just another relic, another faded ghost from the Renaissance. But what if I told you this forgotten painting, dismissed and ignored for hundreds of years, actually changed the course of art history? This isn't just a story about paint on canvas. This is about jealousy, betrayal, buried secrets, and how one overlooked masterpiece rewired the very DNA of Western art. Tonight, we're not just looking at a painting. We're digging up the Renaissance's best-kept scandal. Let's rewind. Florence, late 1400s. The city is buzzing like a beehive dipped in gold. Patrons with fat purses commission artists the way today's billionaires collect supercars. If you were young and talented, your future could explode overnight. But if you got ignored, you were dust. Now here's the drama. In 1485, in the workshop of Domenico Ghirlandaio, there was a teenager, sharp-eyed, moody, stubborn. His name? Michelangelo Buonarroti. One day, a fellow apprentice gets jealous of his sketches, punches him in the face, and breaks his nose. That nose stayed crooked forever. But the real story wasn't the broken bone. It was what Michelangelo saw inside that workshop, how contracts were signed, how apprentices painted backgrounds while the master signed the work, how art was less pure inspiration and more business with paint. And in that same era, forgotten on a side wall of a Florentine chapel, hung a painting that nobody cared about. It wasn't Leonardo's Last Supper. It wasn't Botticelli's Birth of Venus. It was just a quiet, dusty fresco showing ordinary Florentines praying to the Virgin. But here's the twist. That painting contained something revolutionary. Instead of flat, symbolic halos, the figures had weight, shadows wrapped around their faces, their clothes crumpled like real fabric. It was like breathing oxygen after a lifetime of incense smoke. This tiny detail, buried in a forgotten fresco, was the seed of the Renaissance's obsession with realism. People didn't realize it at the time, but artists who studied it stole those tricks and injected them into their own masterpieces. Think about that. A painting ignored by its patrons becomes the genetic ancestor of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling. Drama hidden in plain sight. Now, let's talk business. You know how we think of artists as tortured geniuses working for the love of art? Forget it. Renaissance painting was raw capitalism. We actually have the contract signed between Ghirlandaio and the Vespucci family. It specifies the price of blue pigment, lapis lazuli imported from Afghanistan, more expensive than gold. It details how many assistants could touch the brush. It even says who got the leftovers of the pigment after the painting was done. Imagine being an apprentice, watching your master haggle over paint the way today's lawyers argue over stock options. That's not the romantic image of art. That's art as blood sport. And in the middle of it all, a forgotten fresco, quietly shifting the rules of the game. Flash forward. Leonardo da Vinci sketches frogs. Yes, frogs. Not angels, not Madonnas, but slimy, jumping frogs with legs bent like springs. Why? Because Leonardo was obsessed with how muscles moved under the skin. He studied frogs so he could paint humans with terrifying realism. Now, connect the dots. Where did Leonardo learn the obsession with anatomy, shadow, movement? From studying works that nobody else thought twice about. He looked at those forgotten paintings and thought, wait, if a poor apprentice can make cloth look real, why can't I make flesh come alive? Boom, revolution. Here's another mini-drama, 1490. Michelangelo, still a teenager, is caught carving statues so lifelike they make seasoned sculptors nervous. His jealous rival, Pietro Torrigiano, their fuel. Now, let's widen the camera. Renaissance Florence wasn't just about genius, it was about survival. Guilds controlled who got to paint what. If you weren't in the Painters Guild, forget about commissions. If your patron died of plague, your career died too. And in the middle of this chaos, little paintings, dusty frescoes, leftovers from second-rate workshops were quietly shaping the giants. Every stroke mattered, even the strokes nobody noticed. Think about the society. Florence was basically Shark Tank with halos. Rich families like the Medici bet on young talent. Win and you're immortal. Lose and you're forgotten. But here's the irony. Sometimes the losers, the ones forgotten, left behind ideas that reshaped everything. Like anonymous songwriters whose melodies get stolen and turned into hits. Imagine being that painter, working on a chapel wall, thinking nobody will care, and 500 years later YouTube is talking about you. That's drama. That's justice. Now picture this. A forgotten painting gets rediscovered in 1965, cleaned of soot and wax. Art historians gasp. Wait, this use of shadow predates Leonardo by 20 years. Suddenly, the narrative of art history shifts. The books have to be rewritten. The genius isn't just Leonardo. It's the nobody whose name is half erased in church records. That's the scandal. The Renaissance wasn't a golden age of perfect geniuses. It was a brutal arena where forgotten players still rigged the game. And every time we look at the David or the Mona Lisa, we're actually seeing the fingerprints of ghosts, artists whose names we'll never know, but whose tricks and experiments were stolen, improved, and polished into legend. So next time you walk past a dusty fresco, don't roll your eyes. You might be looking at the missing link of art history, the invisible thread connecting jealousy, contracts, broken noses, frog sketches, and masterpieces that hang in the Louvre. Art history isn't just what's in the spotlight.